So welcome to another Startup Stories, and this time with James Williams of the Sero Group. Welcome, James.
Welcome. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell us what the Sero Group does.
So we're on a mission to reduce the carbon emissions from the buildings that we live in. So that includes the homes that we build new and the homes that exist already. So we're a technology business, but we're kind of we're a solution and a technology company. So we support house builders, local authorities, housing associations in understanding how they're going to achieve net zero for the homes that they build and that they operate. We support the resident that lives in those homes as well. So we have a tech solution, which is what we call a home comfort service. And this is really innovating around energy retail. Currently, we clock up credits on a meter, which is it's kind of very much the old way of doing things. And we're moving to a service-led model where it's about comfort, it's about outcomes, and it's using intelligence and it's using technology to provide a better customer experience. And then the last piece to the puzzle is when we've built the right homes, we've got the customers living comfortably within those homes. How do we use those as part of our energy system? Our grid is changing. We have periods of, with no wind. We have periods where the grid is full of free wind energy that we have to do something with. And this is usually the role of the grid operator to balance the system. Now, how can we use our homes to balance the system? We'll be doing that. We'll be charging cars, heating hot water, starting to heat homes when electricity is very cheap and also very low carbon. So what we can do is improve the value proposition for customers where their home can play a role in supporting our wider energy system. So at Sero, we take a role in the whole journey from the home right the way through to the occupant to supporting the energy system. It's very much a technology-led approach.
Excellent. So tell us a bit more about the entrepreneurial journey. Where did the idea come from? Why did you start the business? What's been happening since? Tell us a bit about that journey itself.
So a little bit about me first, as some relevant context to that. I started my career in the automotive industry, which is of course an industry that does continue to innovate and research and develop its products. Unlike the housing sector, but I did a stint in the automotive sector. I then moved into renewable energy, into project development. So at that point, got a very good understanding of how our energy system and how our transition to renewable energy really works. And it was actually in business development in that organization that the opportunity for housing was evident, which actually led to me founding Sero alongside a partner of mine, a co-founder of mine who had experience within the housing sector. So we're very much a coming together of housing and energy, and these are two silos that have always existed. And even today, we have the built environment sector, the housing sector, we have the energy sector. Actually, we can create solutions that solve problems on both sides. So we've got very large incumbent industries within the housing sector that are not famed for innovating and pushing forward quality and sort of new products and new manufacturing methods. But as the climate agenda is really starting to hit home, shall we say, it's important that we really start to push our buildings further. So that's a combination of sort of energy efficiency, but also the rise in new clean tech as well, batteries, heat pumps, solar systems. How do we pull all this together? So we saw very much an opportunity to build housing that contributed towards the climate agenda, but actually use technology to create better customer experiences at the same time. So 2.5 years ago, our original plan was actually to build all the homes ourselves. So we actually created a development company where we thought, we'll go out as a new builder, we'll build all these homes ourselves. Quickly realized that actually very difficult to scale up as a house builder. Therefore, actually created a second company, which is our technologies business, that actually now can scale up through partnership. Because housing associations, local authorities, some of the more progressive builders are trying to address these problems now. So there was very clearly a role for us to say, hang on, we know how to do this. We can help them do this as well. And that's really where the kind of the Sero approach kind of started to accelerate. And fortunately, particularly within Wales, that we have the right political environment to sort of pump prime the business to where it is. So as the company was founded, shortly afterwards, Welsh Government announced the Innovative Housing Programme, which was great because that was designed to be a test bed for new solutions. And we have great political will here around housing, around sort of fuel poor and vulnerable customers as well, which has really created it's really pump primed what we're trying to do. We can walk into a housing association, talk about heat pumps now because of some of these schemes that have gone on in parallel. So, we really saw an opportunity to fix a problem that the existing market isn't and still isn't really willing to address.
Oh, excellent. So, interesting story. But as you've developed, what would you say have been the strengths of the business? What have been the key factors in the success of Sero to date?
So, what we've, I think there's a few things, and I think part of this is actually, I think as in our early stages, we, of course, like any startup, you're trying to present big picture solutions to organizations, large housing providers. And I think first of all, I think we were very much believable, and we still are believable that's the outcome that we're looking to do. We have very good experience across the various sectors, and you going back to that silo point, I think we were really challenging this approach where, just thinking about the way the building operates in itself, thinking about how on the other side, how the grid sees it. So I think bringing together experience across two sectors, bringing that together and looking at it more of a system view, gave us a really clear advantage from the start in securing some really great partnerships. And I think that's probably the best thing that we did is we chose, and we were fortunate in securing some very good partners who we still work with today. So, at this point, I'll name both Pobble Group and Tyrion Homes, who, I remember I walked into, I'd recently had a cycling accident, and I was 8 months on crutches, but I kind of hobbled into a boardroom full of executives on both sides from both Pobble and Tyrion and said, let's stop doing 5 home projects. A 5-6 home pilot project is not going to transform this industry. We need a 200 to 300 home site. Give us a 200, 300 home site. We'll push it. We'll prepare the application for Welsh Government. We'll push the vision through Welsh Government's innovation program. But we need big. We need to go big. We can't keep doing little cottage solutions. We need to change this industry. So actually, at that point, we walked away with what is now our flagship project. There are customers living in those homes, that we once talked about sort of 2.5 years ago. So I think the right partners was really key, and there was timing is really important. Of course, I think doing what government was really wanting to do at a point where sort of some of our partners were feeling the pressure around decarbonisation. What are we going to do? What's our corporate strategy? How are we going to deliver green homes? How are we going to finance it? And I think that's we've addressed their key barriers from the start. And I think another example there is there are a number of barriers. We can't rely on building regs, building regulations changing or the policy environment changing. So what we've chosen to do is actually start to take away the barriers that exist. Finance being one of them. So we now have a really important project that has Rightmove as a partner. We've got a Monmouthshire Building Society as a partner. We're basically developing green mortgage products. Now, that's not core business to us, but it unlocks our core business. So we've had to go off in this direction and really start to take away some of the barriers there. And we have that approach across the business. But luckily, it's the right environment to innovate and to test new ideas, both at the UK and Welsh Government level.
Good. So really successful so far, but obviously startups, they can be up and down. So what do you think have been the biggest challenges that the Sero Group has faced since you started the business?
I think we've, of course, one of the challenges that we have is certainly in residential construction is this, the time that it takes from a project to go through planning to have homes living in them is actually being able to think about our business model and the value, how we can unlock value for us as a business early on in that process. Because if this was all about the customers, well, we would have waited 2.5 years for our first customer. So, and that would require a lot more funding. So this is really why we've taken that approach to support developers from really early on. Is because ultimately cash flow, of course, is king, and managing the cash is king, and being able to do that, be able to find a value proposition for ourselves very early on in the project's been really important, because we're really in this to manage people and customers that live in these properties. But we can't wait 2.5 years for our first person to pay us pennies every day for our service proposition. This is a scale. Importantly, this is a business that needs to work at scale. So having to scale up rapidly is a really, we have to do it. We can't, we're in an industry where you've got the likes of Octopus and Bulb and, who are accruing millions of customers, in just a few years. That's the sort of industry we're in. So I think one of the real challenges for us is scaling. We have to commit to, we have to find lots of projects. We have to be able to deliver lots of projects. We have to do that efficiently. And I think being able to do that whilst, of course, managing the kind of startup funding cash flow journey is always, is the bit that, we always find difficult. We've also, we've learned some important lessons along the way. We early on in the project, we were looking at something that was too boutique and wouldn't scale. And unfortunately, we changed direction. We had we were able to change direction, and essentially. You can be too stuck in that innovative space. We really need to deliver solutions that can scale and that our partners will adopt at scale as well. So I think we've learned some really important lessons there. But yeah, it's all about scaling for us, which of course means growing the team very quickly. It feels very quickly. Having had 5 people start this month right now, it does feel very quickly, particularly in a pandemic world where they all join remotely. There's all sorts of challenges to address there, of course.
So you talked about how you engage, how you didn't want to wait for the customers as such, and you had to be proactive yourself. But how have you been engaging with customers? What's been your approach, and more importantly, how do you try to understand their needs and respond to those?
So for customers, for us currently are our partners, and we very much. At the moment, we are B2B2C. The customers that we accrue within our what I would call our customer model, but I mean people living in homes. Part of our business, that consumer part, is they essentially move into. We're already there in the home before they move in. So we tend to acquire and accrue those customers through the process of partnering our development partners, and so we. There's what we've done to date is try to better understand the needs of those organizations, many of them housing associations, who are of course both ethically driven towards net zero, as well as managing customer. They have a fuel poverty challenge, they have a decarbonisation challenge, they have downward pressure from Welsh government around reports coming up all over the place about all homes EPC by 2030. So, and actually, it's a really confusing environment, because at the same time, you've got all of these clean tech solutions and these different ways of doing things. So they're kind of squeezed in the middle between what is a very fast moving clean tech sector and a changing rapidly changing policy environment, and actually that just leads to complexity. So one of the what we've tried to focus on is making it easier to transition. How do they better understand the technologies? How is it going to run for the customer? How are their asset management teams going to work with it? What data are they going to get that will allow them to make sure that if they do take a wrong turn, that we won't take it a second time? So a lot of our focus is on not repeating the problems of the past with innovative housing, where this is really where our business model is unique. Is historically somebody who's involved in the design and construction of the building, when that building is finished, they leave. They're done. It's handed over to the customer or the housing association, the tenant. And that's usually the last that you see. With regard to defects and everything else, there's a little bit of that, but otherwise they're pretty much gone. Because we stay involved and we've got an interest in running that customer long into the future, we're on the same page. We're in line. We need to choose a technology solution that is simple, that can be maintained, that that we've got good warranties over, that the customer's going to understand. And I think that's aligned our thinking with that of our customers. And actually, I think that's one of the most unique things about what we do. And I think that I think is very evident with a lot of the partners we talk to, that where they will turn around and say, "But that really solves our problem there. You guys are on the hook for this as well. That makes the difference. You're not just going to sell us something. That makes a big difference."
So you talked about how the business started, and it seems always that the Sero Group is very clear about what it wants to achieve. But over the last couple of years, 2.5 years, has the purpose or the mission of the business changed at all? Have you refocused, or has it just been one clear idea of what you want to achieve?
No, of course it changes all the time. So, and it's still changing, of course. And I think that's, how many times have I written the business plan? I probably couldn't tell you. No, I think it's part of the advantage of being a startup is that being nimble in your product and your direction. So the mission has always been the same, because the mission's always been about making net zero easy and targeting residential buildings. That's expanded really to really include the existing homes. Like I say, when we started this, it was really about building new homes ourselves. Actually, what we build 250,000 new homes a year. There's 27 million homes that exist already. So clearly that's the big challenge and it's the big opportunity as well. So we've really transitioned to looking at all buildings. We've also we've also changed our approach around the customer offering. That's evolved slightly over time. Early days, do we become a supplier ourselves? Do we spend the money? We could probably spend 250,000 going out getting an electricity supply license. Is that the right thing to do? And so we've had big decisions to make along the way around how we're going to operate long term and what our USP is. We've around that customer model, we decided that we're not going to be a licensed supplier. There are enough of those already. We're better to focus on partnerships with them, and that's where we've put our focus in. But we really have evolved the business, which is kind of the fun part, I think. And the scale is increased. I remember my first business plan saying we're going to do 5,000 homes in 5 years. We're now doing 100,000 homes in 5 years. So I think we've got a better idea of where the sweet spot for scale is, and actually that number just keeps growing. And we've got more. We've got a better view of our path to achieving that scale now, as we get into as we get into the detail around how we're going to provide solutions into this sector. But no, we're constantly, I think we've got 9 digital products in development at the moment, from apps to dashboard tools to survey tools, to behind the scenes intelligence and and platforms that will. So we've our original product suite is 3 times larger. Our pipeline is 20 times larger. It all changes all the time, but that's because we're really fueled by the change in this, in the decarbonization agenda. I always joke that when the business started, Greta was still in school 5 days a week. So it's changed a lot. If you think all of the climate school strikes, the likes of Extinction Rebellion, the Paris Agreement, recently, even as of this week, Boris announcing it's not going to be a 50% reduction by 2030. It's going to be a 68% reduction in carbon by 2030. It's an extra 18%, overnight that we've just added to the target in the next decade. That's going to mean serious things for this sector in terms of getting ready for this challenge.
So the business has grown. It's becoming more and more successful. Have you had any moments of self-doubt over the last 3 years?
But from my perspective, I think the most interesting thing is when the business is no longer the founders, and the founder is essentially starting to steer it in the right way rather than drive it in the right way. And I think that's what's really I found over the last 12 months is that now, we have, a reputation across the UK. We're doing some of the biggest, most significant projects in retrofit and new build. Recently just won a project with Welsh Government on existing housing stock that's got 26 RSL partners. The company has its momentum now. The team has its momentum now, and my role, rather than trying to create all these opportunities, is to try and make sure that we manage them and we continue to drive it in the right direction. And I think I've had a change in my role. And of course, when you have that night where you lie awake and go, hang on, what are we doing? What are we building? In what, by when? And you have those sort of those sort of moments where you realize quite everything that you've got to achieve, and everything that you can achieve, of course, leads to general pressure and sleepless nights and everything else. But I think the best, what I do personally is just think about where we've got to from where we were, as a company of 1 and 2 people, and actually that I think we've done the really hard bit. I think finding your identity, creating your business model, and identifying those key relationships is almost the harder bit. It's just a different phase. I think we just got to get ready for that next phase. But of course, all the time have those worrying moments. Usually lying awake late at night. But so
we've talked about various, shall we say, lessons that you may have picked up over the last few years running the business. What do you think is the most important lesson that you've learned in running, your own business for the last 2 to 3 years?
I think when where you've got sort of really critical commercial agreements, we have in most cases had a alternative. We've thought a lot about the risks, and I think having good mentors is really important as well. And I'm fortunate that I do have the ability to call on good mentors, and I think those dead ends are key. And I mentioned around going down particular routes in the past that we've very quickly been able to steer away from. We've always kind of managed the what if, commercial opportunities that don't stay great forever. We have known what our routes, our kind of alternative routes are, what our game plan is. I think we've managed that pretty well. I think that's a key one, really. I think I think we're still learning about, we've got a lot right now. The lesson that we're really important lessons that we're learning are how do you grow a team remotely in an environment where we pride ourselves on creating this really fantastic family culture, like this modern, flexible culture. And ultimately we're being, we're also being pulled away from that to an extent, because this remote environment is really difficult to implement culture in this environment. So we've and to scale people up whilst you're busy. So I think we're still learning lessons around the best way to bring people into the company, to make sure that they're, as we say like Sero-fied, what this company is trying to do, how it communicates with how it wants to communicate. And I think that challenge is even harder when you have to be talking to somebody over a video for them to be learning some of that. But no, I think we've had a really good. I think we've had a good game plan that we've had to implement along the way. And I think the other one really is around understanding cash is just, I think it's, as I'm sure it's probably one of the main reasons that startups fail is about managing the cash.
It is.
And I think trying to keep a very close eye on that all the time and understanding what happens if that doesn't happen, what happens if this happens, is important as well. And of course, I think that's as one of the kind of main points to manage really. Yeah, still learning. I'm a first time founder, so there's plenty of stuff still yet to learn. I think being able to learn is really key. None of us know it all, of course, and we can only play the cards in front of us.
So building on that, obviously we work with a lot of graduates who are starting and want to start their business. So what sort of advice would you give to somebody thinking about whether they take that step to become an entrepreneur? I'd encourage anyone to do it, because I think it's really exciting. I think trying to understand. I think the key thing is trying to understand the problem that your industry, that your solution or your industry is facing. Truly understanding that problem, and I think that's still one of the things that I think we've done very well, is put solutions forward that actually resonate. When you're sat in that first meeting room describing what you do, they actually say, you know what, that is a problem, that we've had that problem before, that happened here. So I think truly understanding the problems that your customers face is really key. And I think there's also there's a lot more support out there than might be obvious. It takes a lot of time to put some of these sort of, whether it's a bids in for R&D projects. One thing that we have been quite successful at, securing sort of innovation, R&D, exploratory funding, and that has allowed us to test our product and ideas very early on, where typically, it would be difficult to raise, angel or seed funding to do that. And actually, there are a lot of things that government wants and needs going forward. And I think that you'd be surprised at how many places there are to take those opportunities, form good partnerships. It takes a lot of time to do that. But you will find, even in some cases, large corporates. We were talking to some very large global tech companies within 6 months, really. But they were willing. They are willing to listen, and you're pretty surprised how far you can get sometimes. Particularly if you're going to take all the, what it typically means is doing all the legwork. Whether it's writing the bid based on no actual commitment, putting all that effort in, wondering whether you've been successful. So no, I think for me, there's understanding the product, understanding your solution, understanding the customer's problem, and also looking at what support you can get very early on in sort of priming your ideas and solutions, where you could get a little bit of help initially to test these things. And that's really the journey that we've been on. Good. So who's the entrepreneur you admire the most, and why do you admire that person? Who's one of your inspirations?
I'm a big fan of what Octopus are trying to do right now. So, I follow Greg Jackson, and had the opportunity to collar him in a off-gem reception as well to say hello, which was good. I mean, they're a company that we would very much like to replicate their success. Of course, I mean they're a unicorn. They've just had they've found. I think they're only 6 years old at this stage. They founded in 2014. Their business is all about customer outcomes. It's about decarbonisation. They're very much a mission-led organisation. So that's one that we kind of use as a really good example. If we could follow in any footsteps, we would take them. We're fortunate to have them as a partner right now, which is great. So I think who else? I mean, I think that there's. I say this one with a little bit of caution for obvious reasons, but what Tesla have done and what Elon has managed to do, we sometimes feel a little bit like we're in the same position. He was trying to do electric cars, but nobody else wanted to do it. So I think anyone who's created something like he has at Tesla in an environment where the incumbent industries are so set on delivering what they have always done, and that's the position we're in with housing. We feel very much in the same position. If we could be a housing version of Tesla, then great. For all his quirks, of course, Elon is a quirky individual, but you can't fault what he's managed to achieve with Tesla in an environment that hasn't really supported the business. And I think that's the really key thing is growing a business in an environment that doesn't set a path for you. So yeah, I'm fortunate that my father's also an entrepreneur and has as a youngster saw him start companies from the bedroom, of course, and he continues to be a great mentor for me as well in helping me stay on track and make the right calls. So as I said, it's really important to have good mentors, and I'm fortunate that I do.
Final question then. What are the plans for Sero Group over the next few years? What are your big plans for the future?
So yeah, we're out. We'll start fundraising in January. So we've got some really key projects that kind of start in the summer of next year. So we're targeting I guess it's not seed anymore. It's more like Series A funding in the middle of next year as we target our growth across the UK. We are already working with partners in England, and we've got a little bit of a centre of gravity here in Wales. We anticipate the team by the end of next year will have gone from 20 to 50 people, and actually the plan in 5 years is for us to be just short of 300 people based in Cardiff, as a business turning over just over 50 million. That's the plan that we're working towards at the moment. So we have to grow. We have no choice to grow quickly because of the industry we're working. That customer business, we ultimately will see competition from the likes of the Shells and the Octopuses and the and the Centricas of the world, as they see housing as an opportunity, and they have their existing customer base. So we're very much a challenger at the same time, but also of course the interest from those corporates in this sector is an opportunity as well, if we can secure a position within the market really quickly. So yeah, our 5-year plan, we're going to have 100,000 customers in our Sero life. That means 100,000 homes that have been built new to a standard that we consider to be that sort of net zero standard. So yeah, there's a lot to do, but we're in an exciting time.